Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. I'm JJ Flazanes, your producer and empowerment strategist. Thank you for downloading today's show. Today, we have back Ainslie MacLeod. I am so excited to share today's episode with you. The first show that we did, Are You a New Soul or an Old Soul? We did not do that on video. However, we did today's episode on video. So if you want to come over and watch that, go to jjflazanes.tv. Now, I say something in today's show about Doug because in the instruction, Ainslie's first book, and we talked about this in the first episode, it's about looking at soul levels and soul ages. And I've gone back and forth with Doug many, many, many times about what his soul level was. And we read the description and we talk about it, and we both agreed that we thought he was a 5. And since the recording of this episode, we've actually had a session with Ainslie. And Doug is a very old soul. In fact, Doug is older than me, which I find a little funny because I think it's the difference between an old soul versus a conscious soul. So we had a really fascinating session with Ainslie. And now that the way that he's positioned it, I see it. I see Doug's lack of attachment to a lot of things, which is definitely very old soul. And so anyway, I just wanted to correct that I was wrong. He is not a level 5. He's actually a level 10 and he's a level 10 5. So if you have the instruction, you can look up that, but that's kind of his life path. And we had a really great session. And while Ainslie is very booked, if you are dying to have, and not literally dying, but if you're dying to have a session with Ainslie, maybe reach out and just let them know that you're a listener of my show and see if they can either put you on a wait list or squeeze you in if there's some more time. It's summertime and a lot of people are going away, and really I'm feeling like the world is literally enjoying the summer and doing a lot less. So if you're feeling super called to have a session with him, please reach out to them and let them know that you're a listener of my show. And if you're one of my top level programs, let them know that too. So Ainslie MacLeod is an internationally acclaimed past life psychic, spiritual teacher, and award-winning author of The Instruction, The Transformation, and most recently, The Old Soul's Guidebook. Ainslie specializes in exploring past lives to reveal your life's purpose and has been a featured guest on Oprah's Super Soul Conversation series. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. I am blessed again to have Ainslie MacLeod with us. Today, we're doing it on video. So for those of you that heard the first show with him, about your soul age, are you a new soul or old soul? You can come on over to jjflazanes.tv to see the video. So we're going to have a video conversation today. And if you're watching this on video, you can even take it with you. So if you drop down below and grab the link for the podcast, you can download this and then take it with you if you're driving or exercising or multitasking in your house. So Ainslie, I'm so excited to have this conversation. Welcome back to the show.
Well, wonderful to be back. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
So in between the first show and the second show, Ainslie sent me the Old Soul's Guidebook. This is your most recent book,
That's
right?
the most recent, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in all honesty, while I did read parts of the instruction, I think I told you on our first show, I went straight to the soul, like, what's your soul level? And I just played with like everybody in my life and who's what soul level, and continue to refer back to it all the time. So this was the first time I was reading from start to finish your book. And what we talked about last time, you had given me a soul reading, if you will, and gave me a past life reading. Mm-hmm. And I thought about that. And, some of the things that really kind of struck a chord with me was the freedom seeking and the why. But you mentioned the digestion piece. And I thought to myself, well, I don't have any like major digestive issues per se. But what I'm reading in the Old Soul's Guidebook made me go, well, wait a minute. So if I'm aware of it now, why am I'm not having more, but I'm not having less. Let's just say that. So the things that sort of upset my stomach or that I have an issue with, or that I can't seem to like manage, I think it's all dietary, but I know it's not all dietary. One of the things in your book, in the Old Soul's Guidebook, and I know you do a lot of past life work with people, and sometimes it is ultra healing, like instantly just from the awareness. One of the things that I want to talk about today for the people who are listening, there's the please work with him, get on his schedule. Good luck to you getting on, but get on his schedule. Okay. Which I want to do, by the way. But for the people who are not going to be able to, for money reasons, time reasons, what have you, I would love to give some people, and I know you talk about a little bit in the Old Soul's Guidebook, but on today's show, I want to talk about when someone has an intuitive hit about possible issue they're having that has to be like a soul life or a past life, like, okay, this isn't a past life. What can we non-clairvoyant people do, if you will? I mean, we're all clairvoyant to a certain degree, but the ones who are less than you, what can we do to help ourselves through one of those ghost pains, I think you called it, right?
Yeah.
Phantom.
Yeah. The ghost pains,
Yeah.
these memories of past life trauma, physical trauma. These things so often show up in the body and in fairly predictable ways. So if you do have digestive issues, they're often related to trauma in the abdomen, being shot, stabbed, something like that. Or it could be eating tainted food, or there can be lots of causes, but it creates anything like that. It could be like an injury to your shoulder in a past life, broken leg or something. These things can show up as areas of weakness, especially if you see like a pattern or a theme. The typical thing, a sign that it's got a past life component to it, is that, well, very often I hear from clients when I tell them about a past life physical issue, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I've seen so many doctors, nobody can figure it out. And that's because it is just a ghost memory, but it often shows up as an area of weakness. So when people have a trauma to the abdomen in past life, it may mean that you hold stress in your abdomen, like everything goes there. Or it's just a sort of like just an area of weakness. People who've died in a past life with respiratory issues, for example, they'll tend to have a weakness in the chest. So if you died of TB in the lungs or pneumonia, then it shows up in this life as a tendency for colds to go to the chest rather than starting anywhere else. In fact, I was talking to somebody just recently and I spotted weakness in her chest, and I said, do colds go there? And she said, I've had pneumonia so often I've lost count. She said it's over 25 times and probably 30. So you see these things continually showing up. I have a weakness in one foot, and I've actually broken it 6 times. I mean, of course, once you break it, it tends to break a little bit easier, but there certainly is a past life component. Now, what happens when you find what went on in the past life? What's the original cause? Sometimes simply by reminding your soul that that was then, this is now, it releases whatever memory is in that part of the body. And that's why, you were saying a lot of the stories I tell, they're quite dramatic. People overcoming pains and physical issues, sometimes just in the moment. Like literally, in fact, sometimes what I'll do is, if someone's talking to me about a pain, I'll ask them before we start doing the work, well, where's the pain on the scale of 0 to 10? And let's say it's a 6, maybe it's a migraine or something. And then I'll check at the end of the session. And very often people go, oh my gosh, well, I don't seem to notice it. And I sometimes, like last week, I had somebody, I just said, call me tomorrow, let me know how your pain is. And she called and said, amazing, it just has completely disappeared. It's gone completely. So, I mean, and for other people, it's less. I mean, we're all different. And how you heal from past life issues, it depends on who you are, and it's easier for some rather than others. We can all do it. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more work or a little bit more time. There was somebody I talked about in my second book who had body temperature issues, all related to death from hypothermia in a past life. And she was suffering extremely cold body, cold to the touch, always freezing cold, always having to carry a sweater. You'll see that with people who've frozen to death in past lives, that they tend to have Raynaud's disease or cold feet, cold hands, cold backs. And in her case, it took about 6 months for the shift to happen. But when it did, it was like a lifetime long thing that disappeared just like that. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer. You got to be kind of patient.
What would you say, and I know I'm throwing this at you, but you've written 3 books about it, so I feel like you could probably handle this question. What would be the steps Right. So there's the identification or the awareness that it's possibly a past life issue.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes that awareness, and I actually really enjoy that you just said that was then this is now. Gay Hendricks in his Conscious Luck book has an exercise that I actually thought of yesterday. That was then this is now, that like there was a physicality to the exercise, which helped to sort of repattern the brain a little bit and to give it a different energetic spin, so to speak. What would be your recommendation past awareness? Okay, this is probably a past life issue. Now what?
Okay.
What can we do?
There's a number of things you can do. You could have a session with me, but like you say, you might have to wait a couple of years. But I have a membership program, Soul World. So you could join that. We do a past life regression every month. I think that personally, I feel past lives explain everything. So I would say doing a past life regression. If you work with me, I just tell you what happened because I'm in the zone. I don't regress people, but I'll do that in groups. But I'll just find out what happened, tell you, this, and this, and then the soul just kind of, processes, makes the connection and releases whatever it's holding on to. But you can do your own regressions. People think there's an awful lot of mystery to these things, but they're actually relatively simple. You could just go into a quiet space, do a little meditation, and put it out to the spirit world. Just say, I want to see the past life cause of whatever it is. And then just go with whatever you get. Sometimes it will just be a gut feeling. Maybe you have chronic wrist pain and you find that you were shackled by your wrists at the end of your past life or something. You might just get a sense of it. You might see a visual. Maybe you just get a quick glimmer of something. You don't need much just to get that little confirmation. And then beyond that, I think it's really important to either talk about it or write about it, or ideally both. Because the problem is that the soul can't separate without help of the conscious mind. It can't separate one life from the others. And this is why past lives affect us now, because we're carrying these memories. You might be on life 120, but your soul's on life number 1 because it doesn't die between lives, like the body and the mind. So it sees what happened 2 lifetimes ago, say, as the way you would see something that happened earlier in this life. You get bitten by a dog when you're 5 years old and you've got a bit of a fear of dogs now. In some ways, it's irrational because it's only because you had some experience that's way back. We're doing a similar kind of thing. We're just kind of saying, look, that was then, this is now. And really, what I love is that the way the soul reacts to being reminded is not usually any kind of dramatic, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It's much more a kind of, okay, great, thanks for helping me, let's move along. It's just, the soul is totally pragmatic about these things. It has no self-pity. It just simply wants to keep improving and growing and healing. And I think this is the fastest way to create really, really deep healing. My hope is that it may take a couple of 100 years, but that past life work makes it into the mainstream enough that when you go to the doctor's office, there'll be somebody like me helping you to deal with the past life issues.
I agree in terms of I've had a few in like a medical intuitive setting, not in a just past life, but again, attached to healing, attached to looking at things that are going on and giving some reason to that. So I would love to see that. And I've been a fan of Carolyn Mace for years. And I know there's someone here locally, sort of in San Diego and California, that I once tried to see. And then I got word of somebody else. And then it sort of just manifested meeting the next person. So I definitely think that it's a stone to uncover in the healing journey when, for me, when something happens and if something happens, I'm the go at it full force with all the things. And because all the things, whether one works better than the other, all make progress and all give so I feel like it's worth trying all of it because it all has value. Maybe one, and collectively, they all help to make a bigger shift. Yeah. So, okay, well, because it's throughout this book. So for those of you that don't know, Ainslie wrote the Old Souls Guidebook, who you are, why you're here, and how to navigate life on Earth. And I'll tell you, I have so many bookmarks in this book because the 10 soul types and the explanation of what happens when parents don't want or don't understand and are trying to sort of shame their child to be more like them, right? There's the when the true you is not acceptable. And I'll tell you that, so, and I love learning. So anytime anyone can shed any kind of aha in my life, because I have so many damn tools, I feel like someone please give me another one, because I'm like searching, and I love it, not out of obsession or like I don't have enough yet. It's just such interesting thought to dive a little deeper from a different angle. And when I looked at the 10 soul types, I have to be honest that I came into a family where I was very wanted. I think I know my soul contracts, I past life reading about that once, again, incorporated in a medical intuitive session. And when she said what she said, it did resonate, even though I didn't necessarily like the story, but it did resonate. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That feels accurate, even though it kind of doesn't sound so good. But when I got to the sections in your book, I definitely have been shamed and for being a leader. And it's like I'm reading this book and going, man, I'm a little angry. I'm a little angry because I wasn't angry before, but now that I'm identifying like that, I'm really stepping into the leader. And I was definitely told I was too bossy, and not everyone's like me.
I took the liberty of checking in with the spirit guides just about 2 minutes before we started. I said, is there anything you want me to, address, or anything at all you want to talk about? And they said, yeah, let's talk about the leader in you, and that you're working through a past life fear around self-expression. Hang on, I do have notes. Let me just if you can
Ooh, I get notes
for a second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hang on. Yeah, it's actually, I got a bit of a past life as well, which is related to the self-expression. We can talk about that separately. I mean, what I'd like to do is address the whole thing about you being a leader, and also how that relates to self-expression. We'll talk about the past life in a minute, but you were shut down. You learned it wasn't safe to speak your truth. In this life, you're going the other way. To a point, the guide said that you may sometimes blurt, or things come out a little bit, sort of, maybe a little bit over directly, So it's just, but it's how you're working through this as a leader. So in your soul types, you've got a very strong leader influence, and that is in a girl and a grown up. This is the one where you get told that you're too bossy, you're not feminine enough, you should be this way. It's the antithesis, if you like, of what so many boys get. It's like you're too sensitive, you need to toughen up. You're told you're too bossy, you need to be more feminine. And the thing is that you see the bossy little girl, and she's just learning to use the authority that she's chosen to come into this world with, that might be perfect when she's leading a Fortune 500 company in 40 years' time. And if parents and teachers just understood that, I think, if they just understood more about how we come in with this full personality, I think things would be so different. I mean, the education system, I think, should be, ideally, it would be very, very different. And, what is the point of, I don't know, taking somebody who's meant to be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like maybe an artist, and forcing them to do math. That was kind of my experience growing up. An awful lot of what felt like wasted time. If they had understood soul types, well, maybe they'd have sent me to do more art and music than expecting me to excel in science and math, which was never going to happen, by the way. So we come in, I posted something just the other day about how, it's a quote from my first book, about how people who think babies are born as blank slates have obviously never met one.
I did read that part, and I was in agreement, because that's how I use astrology, even before they're coming in, to say, here's, looking at a child's astrological profile and having parents say, oh, she'll grow out of this. And I'm like, oh, no, she won't. Like, this is who she is.
It's like, get used to it. I say that to parents sometimes. Yeah, your kid is not going to get any different. They may learn to suppress things if you keep knocking stuffing out of them. But you are who you are. And a lot of what people go through, a lot of people I work with, huge bulk of my clientele is in a narrow age range between 37 and 43. And it's really to do with the soul pushing through as it's hitting around 40. And the soul, by that point, is going, we have really had enough of other people's influence and not being who we are. And that's why you get the midlife crisis, why you get people changing careers, why you get divorces around that time. It's like, this is when things that were maybe working really well or you thought would be right for you, you find are not so much. And so it's a time of change. It's a watershed point for a lot of people. And it's the soul really kind of pushing through and saying, I've got to be me. And that's when you see so many people coming into their own. Ideally, you want to do it earlier. Just to actually, since that my new book came out, I've had a lot more millennial type clients. So I'm starting to see a lot more people in their 20s and 30s rather than 40s and 50s, which has been up until now. And I think the sooner you can do this work, the better. The more you can understand, because who you are is why you're here. You know, if you know your soul types, they speak volumes. They tell you everything about the things that you're here to learn. You with that strong leader in your personality, you're here to learn to use your authority. And because you're working through a fear of self-expression, you're learning to speak your truth. And you're learning some lessons in diplomacy as well, because every leader has to do that.
Well, I definitely came in as with triple Sag, which is very blunt. So yeah. I'll just say I am a Pisces, but the triple Sag is that acknowledgement of I cut through the bullshit and I'm okay that I'm not for everybody. Like the Pisces part of me wants to be liked by everybody and wants everyone to feel my heart, but I also understand frequency and vibration. And if someone, and actually that is why I know that our like parents, so being born into a part leader, spiritualist, soul type, I didn't have a lot of leaders around me. So they don't know what to do with you. It's part that, yes, we don't know what the soul types are, but then we don't have the capacity or the skills, the parents, my parents, to know how to nurture that, to know how to support that, to know how not to shame that, because it's threatening. It's so different than what they are that, again, it just becomes a misunderstanding. And I think this, in fact, I read your book I was reading this section to one of my clients as I was reading it, because because she was dealing with her son, and she's a Taurus, and I keep saying, please stop trying to force him into what you think is best for him. He has to be what he is. And so she's, of course, I think she got your book because I was making sure she knew what page it was on, and that, you know, but it is really the fact that, like you said, with the kids are not born as a blank slate. They come in and you've already made an agreement, everybody, by the way. And in my opinion, and from the work that I've done, it's not a parent's job to mold a child. It's a child's job to push the parent into growing into the person that child needs to be. It's the opposite learning, not the other way around. It's not that you're supposed to tell them what to do and how to do it. It's literally like they're growing you. And the faster I think you understand that as a parent, or let's say as a business owner, or as like your business grows you too. Your business asks you to transcend levels that you haven't been to before. It asks you to grow in ways, which is what my business has been doing in ways that's scary, because as a Pisces / quality time person, what I lose by being me possibly is I become abandoned, and I have less quality time with people because they don't have the capacity to handle, or they don't like my delivery or how I am, my power, so to speak. I know that I'm afraid of my own power. Every time I see a very powerful scene, it happens in a couple different movies, I'm crying and I'm thinking, oh, I know this is because I'm not fully expressing my power yet. And yet people would think you're not, like, and I'm like, no, but it's not going to look the same. It's going to look different than it is now. But I know that's my next level. And I'm wanting to have this conversation. I'm glad. Thank you for asking your guides and my guides to communicate with you, because I literally have the bookmarks in that page of your book. Yeah. And I think one of the lessons, besides how do we as people, without necessarily help right away, deal with some of the past life issues and allow our body and our souls to know that was something in the past, and this new, what we're talking about now, whether it be your own soul's journey that you want to discover and recover, but also understanding as a parent or as a child that your parents probably didn't have the skills, tools, awareness, or consciousness. Absolutely, yeah. To deal with you. I think my parents are third. I think they're new souls. I think they're level 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my ex-husband's a level 6. I know we had a soul connection, but my boyfriend, my life partner, Doug, I think he's a 5. I think he got cracked open. I think he's on the last level of 5, because he went from kind of an unconscious 5 to a much more conscious 5. And in the last like 3 years. And I'm thinking, and all of this is just it's just so interesting, because I'm like, I would have thought,
oh my gosh, isn't it? Yeah.
right. And that's why you have such a flourishing career and life.
But there is a dynamic that I see between in couples, and this might be what's going on. I'd have to sort of sit down with my guides and sort of read you both to figure it out. But this is the typical thing, is that the older, I'm usually talking, my clients are mostly women, probably about 95% women. And so it's typical, I'll be talking to the woman, she's level 9, level 10, spiritualist type. She's on the path, and the agreement she has with the partner, who's a younger soul and often like a hunter or leader type, is that they do the providing. You get to do your thing, your spiritual journey. Then it works well for a while. It can work well forever, but the downside is that then they start complaining to me that they don't get any intimacy, or it's a block to intimacy. It's a little harder as an old soul, getting the intimacy that you want from a younger soul, and especially one that's more sort of leader, huntery, or hunter leader, that sort of type. But it's a compromise, and it's a decision. It's a choice that's made on a soul level, and it's usually to give you as much freedom as you can get, so you don't have to focus on survival issues. So you're not like working 12 hours a day and then having no time to do your stuff. If it kind of frees you up, often after a life where you've really had to work hard and you didn't get to do the things that you wanted to do. Do you want to hear about your past life?
Of course.
Okay.
Who would say no to that?
I don't know. Yes, who would? Exactly. Let's have a look. I just want to remind myself. Okay, I'll just, I've only got a couple of notes here, but this is where the self-expression issue comes from. It was a past life in France. You were male. I don't know what era this was. I don't know how far back it is. The spirit guide said you questioned religion. You're part of the Catholic Church. You question what's going on. It may be, I don't know if you're in the confessional and you're sort of saying, I'm not sure I believe in all this stuff. And you really came down more on the side of being like an atheist. As a result, you were kind of persecuted in the community, actually excommunicated by the church. So I'd imagine that was a huge deal, because of course that creates the fear around rejection. The guides just threw in as an example of how you were treated. They said the windows on your home were broken. People were attacking you, that sort of thing, where things were whipped up a little bit. Now, what happens after an experience like that is that the soul feels, well, it's not safe to, totally express who we are. And then you'll have these lives maybe where you shut down, you hide your light, because the soul feels it's not safe. You got unwanted attention. So this is where you see a lot of people, a lot of my clients have this, where they're meant to really shine much brighter than they're doing, but they're afraid of it. If it's really deep down, the soul is saying, if I stand out, I'll get in trouble. And usually if you can work through that past life fear, it's all about self-expression. Then you find that people are more able to write what they really feel. They can say what's on their mind, and they don't have that same fear of standing out. And leaders do stand out, that like you're also working through self-expression. So what happens in this life after the kind of experience you had in France is a tendency to overcorrect. And that's where that leaders, when it comes to communication, their style is direct. Like you were saying, you're very direct. I always joke that if I'd asked my mom, she's no longer around, but if I'd asked her when I was younger, am I a handsome guy? She would have said, of course you are. If I asked a leader type, I would know that I was going to get brutal honesty. So I'd be very careful before asking a question like that, because it would be like, oh, do I really want the truth? You are primed, sort of like you come into the world, you have to speak your truth. You have to say what's on your mind. And it will get you into trouble sometimes. You just got to make sure it doesn't trigger that fear and shut you down and go, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to say anything. Because you've probably noticed that people will sometimes ask you for advice. They'll come to you to what, I mean, what they're looking for is, this is a leader thing. They're looking for action steps. I joke about how if a leader type writes a book, it will have a title like 5 Steps to Such and Such, or 10 Ways to Do Something. All about action. And so when somebody tells you about their troubles, ask for advice, they are looking for that leader in you to tell them what to do, really. Have you tried doing this? Or how about you do that? And you have to have the confidence to do that. That's part of the problem. If you've had that knocked out of you as a child, then a person might be reluctant to express that. But that's what you're here to do. It's how you can, or one of the many things you're here to do. But it's how you not only heal yourself, but you help other people as well. And that's always what's called a spiritual act. Anything you do that heals yourself while you're helping others.
Well, I do all of that, and I actually do that all for a living. So, the podcast was the way to express something that I didn't have an audience for. It was a way to put it out there and have no attachment to, when I was just working with people one-on-one in person, or let's say just doing as a trainer, exercise or diet related things. But what I really want to talk about was energy and law of attraction and intuition and meditation and past lives and soul contracts. And this was the conversations I wanted to have to also connect the body. It wasn't separate from, I see it all as very connected. Okay, it is all very connected. And so
that's it, because your soul can't separate mind, body, and spirit. That's a really important principle, because it explains everything in a lot of ways. But sorry, do continue.
No, so for me, I mean, it's funny we were talking about how I was excommunicated from the church, because I actually have been excommunicated in this lifetime from my family, not my mother and father and brother, but from the rest of the family, from an incident, a misunderstanding, misinterpretation, what have you. But anyway, so it's reemerged. And when it did happen, I asked myself how I attracted this. And I was really honest about the level of conversation, level of consciousness, the level of experience that I want to have in this lifetime, and been working out. I mean, I think I've moved enough further away from this, and I feel pretty good about most of the detachments, if you will, that came from that situation. But it was a lifetime of working through some of that. And again, being who I am it was bossy. It was whatever. It was too much. It was all the things that I'm not allowed to do. And no one was interested in talking about any things that I want to talk about. No one. And I did, when you mentioned questioning the church, I did that in this lifetime. I was the kid that said, why do we go to this church and they go to that church? Why do we drink wine and they drink grape juice? Why do they do this? Why do we fast? They did this. I studied religion as a minor in college because I was curious about why everybody believes something different and how that came about and the history of that. So everything in that past life is literally reemerged in this life.
When you study something at college, I was writing something about this the other day. A client of mine who suffered rape in a past life, and again in this life, and actually ended up studying rape at college specifically. And that sort of focus is the soul is urging you to try and figure things out. You're trying to understand your own experience. So you come in having been kind of abused by the church. Well, definitely abused by the church there. You're going to have some very strong feelings right from the get-go. I had a similar thing. I was 5 years old, and I remember telling my dad, I remember exactly where we stood, I remember, the conversation, expecting a lot of pushback. And I just said to my dad, I don't want to go to Sunday school anymore. I just don't believe it. And he was a son of a minister. I thought, oh, here we go. And he went, oh, okay. Took me years to realize that by me not going to Sunday school, he got an extra hour in bed on a Sunday morning. And I think that was why he didn't argue with me. But right from the beginning, I had a huge problem with organized religion because of my experience in past lives where I'd been persecuted. I had horrible experiences with people in sort of established religions. And so I actually declared that at a very young age that I was an atheist. I mean, I was like 7 years old and going, I am an atheist. I barely knew what it was, but I was absolutely determined. And right like that, the weird thing was that I got into my 30s, well, maybe it's 20s, late 20s, and started getting interested in psychics and meeting psychics. And So I'm holding total cognitive dissonance. I'm an atheist, but there's this whole spirit world and psychics. I was like, weird. It was years before I sort of had my own epiphany, and then sort of woke up and went, yeah, maybe atheist's not the right word. There has to be something bigger. And it's just that, unfortunately, religions are man-made, and I say man, specifically. It's males creating this, hierarchy and the structure and the dogma and all of that sort of thing. Jesus or any other prophet or whoever they are, they didn't sort of set up the church. This is something that happens sort of after they're here, and it becomes corrupted almost immediately, unfortunately. But I could go on about this whole day.
So I understand.
Where were we?
I understand. Well, it's because there's so much. I'm like, okay, I'm in the middle of reading the book, and I want to ask about the digestion. I want to ask about the soul types. I want to ask, I want to just read this for everybody. And by the way, everybody get the Old Souls Guidebook. It's page 119. When the true you is not acceptable. Your soul type is your essence, the very heart of who you are. And when your family of origin demands you be something else, it's an attack on your soul. Each soul type can be described in pejorative terms. These are some of the typical examples of the messages each soul type will hear at some point in their lives. So when I saw that you're too bossy, and I already knew, because in pages before that, I'm like, okay, definitely leaders in there, because there was some shame in claiming that, because I don't have an example of that, even in my, I can't think of anyone in my whole family who demonstrated a benevolent leader with a very strong personality, who was wise, conscious, and Leo-esque, if you will, taking care of. I don't know that I have that example. So all of a sudden, it's actually why I started last year in 2019, I launched my first mastermind. And it was me taking the mind, body, spirit, mind, body, soul concept into money. And it was bound to happen. And because I couldn't find it anywhere else. I literally have created everything I've created because I can't find it the way I want it anywhere else. I don't see anybody else taking this approach and adding money as another form of energy to the mind, body, spirit, mind, body, soul approach. And I was like, so for me, it was all an exchange. There's an imbalance. There's this idea that I'm going to work really hard and my focus is money. And I'm like, yeah, but money's one thing. And why are you going to get rid of your health? Are you going to, put your health at risk for money? That's not worth it. So because I couldn't find it, I created it. And that's how I've always been. Every time I check in with, do I want to follow that person? I'm like, no, I'd rather create it myself. And for people who aren't leaders, they look at that and may say, well, that you're arrogant and you're self-centered. And all that, the negative jabs that you get, you're self-centered, you're arrogant, you think you're better than everybody, you think you know everything. These are how I've been told to calm down, be smaller, don't be you, don't allow. And what's been really fascinating, I thought before I got into your book, where I am now, I thought I was going to ask you about relationships, because like I said, my ex-husband, I think, is a 6. And I knew he was an old soul when we met. And that's one of the reasons why I married him. And we had a contract, and it was a very specific contract, and it ended when it was supposed to end. And I learned what I needed to learn, but I know that he was an old soul. Now, Doug, not an old soul, but he's a 5. Yet the things that you talked about, this, and I was racking my brain reading the instruction going, there's no way. I feel my wings get to spread. I've never felt freer. I've never felt more supported. I've never felt more seen. I've never felt more understood than with him. And he's not even an old soul. So I'm like, how is this possible?
It is totally possible, because there is I think a feeling people get, especially after they've read my books. I do try to stress this, that it's not old soul good, but young soul bad. You can, and certainly this agreement that you get between souls, a lot of it can be, oh my gosh, so many things that you touched on. You come in to raise the consciousness of the younger soul parents often, or even if they're older, with the younger soul partner, you're encouraging them. But there's so many things I could talk about here. One of them, I'm just going to, oh my God, as we're talking, there's about 400 things going off in my head. So I've got to rein some of that in. But so, okay, where to begin? You're here to Well, there's two things that show up in your life plan. And the important thing always to look at is your motivation, is what you're doing in your behavior, your traits and your behavior. Are they coming from a place of fear? Are they coming from a place of love, which is essentially your what's in your life plan? So if it's coming from the leader in you, that's positive, because that's, of course, you can slip into intransigence as a leader, and that's a negative aspect of it, but it's coming from you. Now, if you were saying, oh, I'm terrified of leading, never going to do it, that's a past life fear, and you want to get rid of that, because that's not you. You chose, there's a couple of things, and I was really curious. I mean, it was only just in the, like I say, a couple of minutes before we started talking, so I didn't get the chance to explore it with the guides. But you have a mission of love, which is part of this life. And it's not a thing souls choose all the time. A mission of love is part of it's one of 10 missions that your soul will choose to give a little bit of a focus to this life. It puts love on the front burner. You don't need a mission of love to be loving. So, loads of people can be loving. They don't have that as a mission. But what it does is it makes love something you're trying to heal your heart chakra from trauma in past lives. But almost always, you said you came into a very functional family or something like that, but usually it's a sign of coming in and not getting the love that you want, because it helps to prevent embitterment. You might have some other reasons for choosing it. A lot of it will be about being a loving presence and making sure that what you bring into the world is coming from the heart. It's like caring, but in your leader way. So the other thing that shows up, and this is very significant for somebody who's got the leader, is that you have a mission of self-reliance. Technically, it's a mission of reliance, and it's a two-sided coin. So you get like a reliance and self-reliance. What it means for you is that you've come in naturally disposed to be very independent and also very proactive. So when you're talking about seeing like almost like a gap in the market or something, and saying, well, I'll do something to fill this. This is the proactivity that comes with being a leader. Leaders don't wait. I mean, a leader who's functional doesn't wait for other people to tell them what to do. Of course, the leader has to be the one who's saying something's missing, something's wrong, we need to fix it, and make it happen, and do it as effectively and as quickly as possible. So with the self-reliance and the leader, you are going to be very, very independent. You're going to be more independent than the next person, and you're not going to wait for somebody else to initiate something. You will be a kind of self-starter, if you like, with that. The problem can be, along with being a leader type, and it can be also associated with past life fears like failure, is an impatience. And I'm sure you know this, the feeling of, I just want to get it done, move on to the next thing or whatever. I always sum it up when you're working with somebody like, oh, please don't make me explain this again. I've explained it once, it's like, or when you're trying to get someone to do something and you just want to say, oh, for God's sake, just do it. Don't make me have to, explain. And, if you think of going back to how you learn to be a leader, a typical example might be you're on a battlefield, or let's say you're hunting or something like that. This could be going back thousands of years, and you're out hunting a woolly mammoth or something. The leaders don't want to stop and have a group hug, make sure everybody's feelings are taken care of. It's just like, and they don't want to, when they're explaining what needs to be done, they want it. It's an economy of words. It's like, you go over there, and we'll kill the woolly mammoth and drag it home. It's not like discussing the philosophy of hunting, going into some sort of long explanation, or maybe saying, now, I hope you're not going to be offended when I tell you this, but I need you to do this. No. The leader just wants to say, you do this, you do that, and it's done quickly and economically. The problem is, like I said, there's a need for diplomacy, because you have to learn diplomacy, because the problem with the directness can be that when you're trying to bring other people on board, sometimes they can feel a little bit railroaded, and like they don't know where your thinking came from. And an interesting thing about you, it happens with a lot of leaders as well, is that you've got some very gentle parts, very intuitive, spiritualist, creator in there. Your processing time is like lightning, and it's way faster than most people. And so they often don't know how you came to a decision, or feel like you must have just thrown in this thing, pulled it out of your backside and just, and then it can feel a little bit maybe resentful, or they don't cooperate with you because, and it could go even like, who does she think she is, bossy, telling me what to do. So sometimes you do have to just slow down a little bit and kind of bring people on board a little bit, maybe, let them know where you're coming from, or, take into account some of their feelings. Very frustrating. I mean, when you're a leader and you just want things to happen yesterday.
Well, I do have, again, I'm a Pisces still. So and human behavior is something I've been studying my whole life. And I teach, in fact, I have a certification, empowerment strategy certification, and we're going through needs and feelings and identifying and listening to people and to what their needs are. I will say I don't have any patience for victim mentality. And when I do work with people, I'm an adaptive coach. So I will work with, I can meet people where they are, and I can work with someone, and give different, like go through a different angles and different aspects and hit it from different sides to try to get to the same decision. But there might come a point where after I've tried 10 times and it's been a year or 6 months, that I'll say, you know what, my hands are up and I'm done, because you are taking a long time to learn this, and you may never learn this. And I'm not, so, I don't think I'm the right person moving forward for you, because I see the problem and I'm helping to have you do that too. It has to be, whatever.
That's a major positive lesson, by the way, for a leader, because, like I mentioned, the negative aspect of intransigence, it also is related to just keeping on doing things the same way you've been doing it. And if you're not getting anywhere, it's really good to know when to cut loose.
Well, you have to learn that though, right? I mean,
Yes.
you learn that, and it's not something intuitive. It's taken me a while to recognize the signs, and I keep fine tuning, which is really fun. Because, and again, all the other tools I have, like the astrology or whatever, the love languages, those all core wounds, those all can help a framework of compassion. I mean, that's why I created an astrology course, was to teach people compassion for others and why they're not like them, and why they look at the world differently, and why they think differently, and why they act differently. And whether it be an excuse or a reason, yes, I have 4 fire signs. On the human design scale, I'm a manifesting generator. Like, I have a ton of energy and I am super fast. And I recognize, but it took me a long time to recognize, because I used to tell myself, well, if you can do it, if they can do it, you can do it. And that was true. And then when I put that on other people, it came a point where I was working with a therapist who had said, and I'd had like 1 or 2 others before that, working on marital stuff, like by myself, and issues and my triggers, and how can I release this trigger so I could be more present and more loving and not fight back and not cause a power struggle. And one of the last therapists that I had, last traditional therapist, said to me, well, you're gifted. She goes, here's the problem. And I was like, oh. And so what that did for me was go, oh, people aren't like you. They don't process quickly. They don't see this way. They don't assimilate this information. They can't get out of their own way sometimes. They're not curious. My parents aren't curious. It's a little frustrating sometimes, because I've sent them books they'll never read. And if I told them in a conversation, they'd listen, they'd go, oh, and they, like I think I told you in the last one, they'd say, oh, GJ, you're real deep. I'm like, that's what I get from my, I think, level 3 soul parents, who love me very much and are willing to listen at length for anything I want to talk about, very open and loving. But I yearn that connection. I yearn for that depth and that consciousness and that curiosity and that passion. And that's what I didn't get, because I didn't know where to get it from or how to articulate that I needed it. And even if I could articulate it, I wouldn't have gotten it anyway, because that's not who they are. Right. And it's learning how to love everybody where they are, but pick your battles for where you want to put your energy and your time.
Oh, totally. Yes. Because you can't, you can't help everybody. And a lot of people aren't ready. And younger souls, they find it, it's hard for younger souls to sort of reach. Older souls understand younger souls better than the other way around. And, you're fortunate to have younger soul parents who are willing even to listen, because so many of them, the moment you get into the sort of what they would see as like a woo-woo kind of world, they just switch off. They don't, they don't want to know. It's not something that's kind of natural to them. But the wonderful thing, like I said before, is you as the old soul, you can add to their growth, coming in and teaching them other things. I've said this to a lot of people over the years, those who, like, for example, you have very young soul states, like Mississippi, Alabama, or whatever, but you get old souls starting out there. And so I find the old soul, typically the old soul gets to about 16, 18 and bail out for New York or LA or something, and, look at, in search of the tribe. And I'll say to them, you really elevated the consciousness of your family. And they'll go, I really don't think so. And the spirit guides say, you won't know until everybody's processed this life and they go to the other side. But, trust us, your presence as an old soul really changes things. It makes a huge difference.
I think she was a hypnotherapist, but she was very clairvoyant and intuitive. This was years ago. She told me that I was here to cleanse the bloodline for my family, which it felt good at the time, but it felt old soulish, right? Like,
that's the mission of love. Is actually that's the way I see it. The mission of love is usually what breaks the pattern going back generations. The typical thing, I see this all the time with a parent who's with the mission of love. They'll be infinitely more affectionate and more loving towards their children than their parents would ever have been able to be. They literally would not have been able to go there.
Well, I do know you were correct in the old soul, like most of the community, I'm guessing, that has stayed with me and is part of my community is our old souls.
Oh yeah.
And so you guys really, I mean, yes, I told you to get the instruction also, but you have to get the Old Souls Guidebook. And I think there's more work to be done with this, Ainslie, because there's so much in here. It's so rich. Even just that one section, has permission in it, permission to accept who you really are, permission to, and then anything that comes, for me, a resultant of that, like, getting a little angry about it, even though I know that, and it's more of the, gosh, I wish I would have known this a little bit earlier, but I know that it's all in divine timing. I wouldn't have started this show. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have the need for self-expression in an area where I didn't know who to talk to. So what I do, I made a podcast and I put it out to the universe and to the world, not knowing anyone on the other side and not caring or being attached to how anyone would receive it or judge me. And then, the magic happened, which was people saying, I love this, like it's changing my life. And oh my God, and all of a sudden now they're coming out of the woodwork, my soul community of people who are similar and resonate with all this information. And if you're listening to the show, you're probably an old soul if you have been listening to me for a while. So getting the Old Souls Guidebook can not only help you, but your children and your relationship with your parents and forgiving them for not knowing who you are and not supporting you along the journey because they didn't know how, because they were of a different soul type and that happened to them. So again, please make sure to get the Old Souls Guidebook. And I want them to know more about you do the group. So it's the tell us about,
we have the Soul World, I'll try and say it in English, Soul World Community.
And it's soulworldsunday.com?
And we have, Soul World Sunday is, this is what we offer every Sunday. This is a half-hour broadcast. It's for people who are spiritual, not so much religious, that my wife and I, business partner, or she describes my partner in life and in business. And so we present this. This is a free thing we do every Sunday. And I would really invite anyone who's listening to come and join us. Just if you go to, the website will be up in about a day, soulworldsunday.com, or just go to soulworld.com, and there's links, and you can learn about the membership program. But the membership program is a place that it is community based. Is why we call it Soul World Community, because we have a very, very active forum for older, more spiritually conscious souls. And it's a fantastic place to come and meet people. In fact, we've had members who've formed friendships. We've been doing it for about 7 years now. And we've had people who've met soulmates, little trios. There's 3 of them. I call them the crones. They're sort of like, they've met each other. It's been this heartwarming thing. And, talking, you mentioned that sort of feedback that you get. We didn't know what to expect. I mean, honestly, we started Soul World Sunday just over a year ago, thinking, well, maybe only 5 people will listen, but we feel we just wanted to do something that's totally altruistic. It's just from the heart. And it just a little bit of the teachings and answer some questions, and we do a meditation and so on. And the feedback has been absolutely phenomenal. We just get people all the time, just this has made the highlight of my week. This is what, it's it's touched hearts. And so in the Soul World community, same thing. We have a forum where people are saying this is like changed their lives, and especially I think so many of us who are on the spiritual path don't have people we can share the journey with. It could be friends, family who are just not there. And, my family, I couldn't talk to them about my stuff. I mean, eventually you learn that you're not going to get anywhere. I was telling a client today, I actually put it in the book there, that when I told my brother back in Scotland that I was giving up illustration to be a psychic, we're in a pub, he's got his pint glass up to his mouth and he just froze and he looked over the top of the glass at me and said, "So what's your website then? barkingfuckingmad.com?" And that's why I actually own barkingfuckingmad.com. So it's like, why not? Yeah. So I didn't have anybody there, like I could talk to, and having a community and a place that you can go to, you got a problem or something's happening, you want to share it. So as well as doing classes or regression every month, huge Q&A, daily messages from the spirit guides. We have so much stuff. It's, what is it? Content rich, I believe is the term they use. I mean, if you want to learn about your spiritual journey, come and join us. But the reason I'm sort of waxing lyrical is just really thinking about it this morning, about what an amazing community it's become. It's heartwarming. It's beautiful. We have we're very protective as well. Our moderators are very, very protective. There's, zero tolerance policy, and we're there to be good to each other and support one another on the journey. So soulworld.com, check it out.
Yeah, everybody check it out. I'm going to check out Soul World Sunday also after my move, once I get done with this move, which is happening over the next 2 weeks. And please, everybody, get the Old Souls Guidebook. Again, I'm not done with it yet, but there's enough in here for me to ask Ainslie to come back every day for the next month. So, and
I do it.
And yeah, I know if you had the time, you would do it.
Absolutely.
Right. Because this is so fun.
Well, it's a passion, it's just, I find it endlessly fascinating just for myself, even, reading clients. I mean, I just love it because I learn something new every day. There's little connections, the little ways things work together and how you see these, 3 little elements and how they connect up and tell us so much about what you're doing. Endlessly fascinating.
I want to do your chart. because I know you're Pisces, but I would love to know what the rest of that is. Because like you, again, I love when someone can shed a new angle on something and teach me something that I can consider that makes a change. It's one thing, like there are other forms out there like Enneagram, and I mentioned human design, but I haven't brought them into the work yet, or even what is it when you read anyway, there's another therapy or kind of intuitive reading.
Like Akashic Records?
Yeah, thank you. Akashic Records. I have a friend that does it, but I haven't really brought it on the show because I haven't felt a need for it. Maybe it's just timing. Maybe it isn't that I need it. I don't think that all tools are needed or appropriate. You find the ones that work well for you.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's not that they're bad. Like I think maybe human design might be next down the line because there might be value in people understanding that they're not like, I'm a manifesting generator. So the whole energy thing, like if someone's comparing themselves to someone like me and, oh my God, I can't keep up with you. You have so much energy. Well, you're not built that way. And again, like a soul type that could, present some validation and a little bit of permission to not try to keep up with somebody like me. So, it all has its place, but I'm just, again, I probably have stopped this book. I've read it about 4 different people, different sections of it already. In fact, my massage therapist was just here and I told her I was interviewing you because when she saw me at a hotel about, a month ago, I had her and another clairvoyant intuitive healer that I'm good friends with and that I work with. And I'm like, we're like looking at our soul types and we're all talking about our soul types. And of course, we're all spiritualists also.
Of course.
So, it's fun to finally have permission. I have a community like you in that it's very close knit. It's very heartwarming. People feel free to be who they are completely, and they feel supported to be supported. But for those of you that aren't a part of my community, and even if you are, I invite you to check out soulworld.com because I'm going to check it out, and you can't have enough of us. Like we want to know that we're a bigger group than we are. Like we want to be able to connect with more people. I think it feels hopeful. to know that while when we look out into the world and see a lot of young souls mucking it up, which they're supposed to do, we can rest assured and to sort of connect with each other on this, like, no, we know there's a new reality. There's a 5D Earth that we're all holding hands energetically to help bring forward faster.
There is a better future there. What we're seeing at the moment, although it looks like everything is really chaotic and there's so much hatred and anger and all the stuff that's going on, it is actually a lot of what we're seeing is a reaction from younger souls who are afraid of losing. They're losing the status quo, if you like. It's no longer that young soul, white man's world. It's like it's changing, and for old souls, it's a great thing. It's wonderful. Chance for greater equality and greater opportunity for everybody. I mean, the system, the way the world is, the spirit guides say this all the time, the world was never meant to be this way. And we're going through this huge shift, this the transformation, which was actually a theme of my second book. And the transformation is a shift in consciousness that is happening already, but it's going to sort of it will pick up speed and it will really propel us into a more spiritually conscious future. Because if you look at the way the world is, it can't continue like this. I mean, it literally cannot. You can't, we can't be continuing to pollute the world. We won't have a world to live in. I mean, we can't continue treating the world the way we do, or treating people the way we do, or, this terrible inequality we have can't continue. This can't go on getting worse and worse. At some point, something has to change. And it will be old souls, spiritual old souls, like you were saying, spiritualist types, old souls who will lead the way. A lot of healers are doing this already, and whether they know it or not. Unfortunately, what you're getting is like a reaction from the younger souls who are going, "Oh, I don't like this." I was pretty happy when I was top dog here, and the idea of greater equality or whatever, that doesn't appeal. They feel like they're losing something. It's a sort of zero-sum thing for them. If suddenly everybody else has greater equality, they somehow feel they're going to lose out on their power or something like that. So the great thing is that it's inevitable. It will happen. I mean, I say inevitable, providing we don't destroy the planet in the meantime. So fingers crossed and all of that. But it's going to be a hell of a lot better place for everybody.
I often live in a reality where I pay no attention to any of it. So when I happen to look into the current reality and get into alignment with what is not right about this, I take the contrast and say, okay, what do we want to have happen? And let's do some work to create that. And that's part of why we're having the show also, right, is to spread the word. I mean, I've been doing the show now since 2014. And so I've been very committed to the journey and to the message, right? And this is all, again, and I love all of this. So I appreciate you coming back on the show. And of course, you are welcome to come back anytime and as often as you will allow, putting in your schedule. And we could talk about your other book, which I don't have yet. And we can talk about anything that you want to talk about, because I think it's enlightening, but I don't mean it in that way. It gives people, again, another perspective to consider, especially on their healing journey, or even in their relationships with people and their self-understanding and self-awareness, because to me, that is definitely why I'm here, to help people become a little more self-aware and take back the responsibility of their own power and to heal themselves and to get the information and to how to live a healthier, happier life while they're here. And it's easier to do than you think. It's just you got a lot of stuff in the way that makes you think you can't do it. So I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.